meeting. It is August 2nd, 2023. And the Seattle Community Police Commission acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Coast Salish people, including the Muckleshoot, Suquamish, and Duwamish people, past and present. With humility, we recognize how much we benefit from living on their land and water. The Seattle Community Police Commission honors and highly esteems these tribes. We hope that this acknowledgement will encourage authentic relationships with urban Native people and all Coast Salish people. And I will take attendance at this time. Commissioner Lars Erickson.
Good morning, present.
Good morning. And Commissioner Hunter is here. Commissioner Adrian Levitt.
Good morning.
Morning. Commissioner Suzette Dickerson. Commissioner Lynn Wilson. Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioner Raven Nicole Tyler. Commissioner Mary Ruffin. Commissioner Reverend Harriet Walden.
Here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioner Joel Merkel.
Good morning, President.
Morning. And Commissioner Joseph Saya. Commissioner Lejea Washington. Commissioner Officer Mark Mullins.
Officer Mark Mullins is here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioner Lieutenant Tony Gatke.
Present.
Good morning. And Commissioner Jeremy Wood. Commissioner Tasha Johnson.
Good morning, present.
Good morning. And Commissioner Erica Newman. Hi. Thank you all for being here. You were sent the draft agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Agenda from the last meeting.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Next on our agenda are the minutes, to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If not, I would receive a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as distributed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved. Okay. Commissioner Raven? Nicole? Tyler? Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Glad you're here. We're gonna move in quickly to some updates. And for the co-chair updates, I will be present at the Seattle Police Management Association meeting this coming Tuesday and make comments. The co-chairs continue to have conversations about culture and racism and SPD, and particularly as it impacts community and policing and officer wellness. And at our next meeting, we intend to have a longer conversation on culture at SPD, and we hope that all commissioners will come ready for that conversation. We will keep you updated on our work as we move forward on this very important topic. And now we'll have our executive director's update.
Great, thank you. So we're going through a lot of staff changes, but things are really moving forward. One of the things that I wanted to mention to all of the commissioners is that there is an upcoming conference. It is the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. the CPC staff is going to be attending this conference. It's from November 12th to November 16th in Chicago. And we can support a few commissioners who would like to attend that conference and learn more about your new role as part of the civilian oversight system. So please let me know, reach out to me directly if you're interested in joining us at that conference. We'd love to have you.
Thank you so much. We will not have a community engagement update at this meeting, and so we will move directly into our work group updates. Is there an update from complainant appeals?
Sure, I can provide that update.
Thank you.
Yes, we met yesterday with the group and the consultant, I'm not sure quite the right term, but who is going to work on this white paper for the group, and he updated us on his research so far and updated us about sort of the comparable jurisdictions that have complaint and appeals process that he's going to be looking into. So he's moving forward with that research, and we will hear from him again on August 15th.
Okay, thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
Is there an update on police practices?
Sure, I can give a quick update. If I remember, we met last week. All the weeks are moving together for me, but we discussed the BOLA wrap. We have our letter that we're all going through right now. Myself and Jaya, we are going to take over Mina's position while we look for someone else to fill her role. And then we had a really good conversation about the convergence of every single event possible in Seattle not too long ago with Taylor Swift, the block party on Capitol Hill, and everything else that was going on. And so we're going to start looking into what does that mean for police practices and how does that converge with behavioral stuff as well, and what we can do to maybe limit the next time it happens with police being stretched pretty thin and not having enough support. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're focusing on the BOLA wrap, and then we'll move into that additional piece at a later date.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Ward, I see your hand is raised. Do you have a question?
No, that was inadvertent. Thank you.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you. Just wanted to check. How about our behavioral health work group? Is there an update there?
So we also, like the police practices group, we spent our last meeting going over how we were going to move forward with the staff person, Mina, who just did an excellent job. So, and also we're really focusing right now on the crisis intervention aspect of the police department, as well as officer wellness. And my understanding is that Commissioner Mons agreed to share with us some of his thoughts about that, possibly at our next meeting. So we're going to follow up on that. And then all four of the commissioners that are participating in this work group are signing up for various aspects of the crisis intervention training that is put on once a month at the Criminal Justice Training Center. I believe that's right. So at least two of us are going in September, and I think Erica is going in December. We also signed up for trauma-informed workshop put on by the city ombuds office. And I can tell you from personal experience, I attended a workshop on trauma-informed interactions with clients that was put on by the Bar Association, and it was really great. Was very, very helpful. So that's what we're doing, and we're just moving forward, and hopefully we can find a way to keep going while you hire a new policy person. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank all of our work groups for continuing to move forward without the staff support that we have had in the past. Appreciate that. I don't believe there's any new business at this time, so we will go directly into department updates. The first update comes from the city council, and Newell is not able to be present with us, but he did send a report that he would like me to read. and his report is the Seattle City Council will be holding a public hearing to gather community input on the upcoming Seattle Police Management Association SPMA contract negotiation. It will be on August 8th at 5:30 p.m. inside council chambers at Seattle City Hall. The hearing will take place during a special meeting of the Council Select Labor Committee and Public Safety and Human Services Committee. This hearing is required by Seattle Municipal Code Section 4.04.120, subsection F, at least 90 days before bargaining begins. SMC 4.04.120.G states the city of Seattle will consider in good faith whether and how to carry forward the interest expressed at the public hearing. Those suggested changes that are legally required to be bargained with SPOG, SPEMA, or their successor labor organizations will be considered by the city in good faith for inclusion in negotiations, but the views expressed in the public hearing will not dictate the city's position during bargaining. The council blog has a post with additional information at council.seattle.gov, including a graphic showing how the negotiations process works for Seattle's two police unions. So he says thanks, and that is Newell's report. Okay, the next update will be from the monitor. Mr. Ward, do you have an update for us?
Good morning.
Morning.
There is no update from the monitor team. We continue to work on the accountability, sustainability assessment. The monitor is scheduled to be in Seattle next week, the week of August 14th. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you. I inadvertently skipped the mayor's office. If there's someone here from the mayor's office to give a report, we would love to hear that now. Moving right along. How about an update from the Department of Justice?
Hey, good morning. This is Matt Walbert from the U.S. Attorney's Office. No update from the department. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Is there an an update from Office of Police Accountability? How about the Office of Inspector General? And is there an update from the Seattle Police? Okay. Yeah, we are moving right.
Suzette is online now.
Pardon?
Suzette is online now.
Oh, okay, great, great. Well, next on our agenda is a presentation on the Seattle Police Management Association. And we are glad to hear from two of our commissioners this morning, Commissioner Suzette Dickerson and Commissioner Lieutenant Tony Gadke. So Suzette, if you would please introduce yourself and your role as it relates to negotiations and the contracts and SPEMA. We would appreciate that, and then we'll move into Lieutenant Gadke's presentation.
I am one of the here and also the technical advisor for the SPOG and SPMA contracts. And my role in all of this is working with LRPC and the city in conjunction with OPA and OIG. And we give our recommendations so what I do is I bring forth the recommendations that we create from the CPC to LRPC and then push for those recommendations to be put into the parameters.
Thank you. Any questions for Commissioner Dickerson?
Could you expand a little bit? Are you in the room, or I mean, once through that and the negotiation starts, do they come out and give you an update, or is it when it's done, then you get to have the red line to be able to see what was offered and what was not taken?
Sure. So initially, what we do is we work together to set, try to set the priorities and put what we're going to put forward for the priorities, which, of course, on our side, it's a lot about, it's mainly accountability. So we do that. And then there were times within SPMA where, yes, I did meet with the parties at the table, but and then had further discussion. And then really it's really the city and SPMA that were bargaining together. They're the ones who are mainly at the table. And then we were provided some updates in regards to the contract and how it was going.
And it is confidential, right? And you can
Correct.
only give us a level because I think for the new commissioners, when you do come, or when you can have something to say, isn't it like a high level, or, something like that?
It is, because any bargaining is confidential. And then we did sign confidentiality agreements.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question too, Commissioner Dickerson, and I'll probably have more questions after Commissioner Gadke does his presentation. But we somewhat recently had the SPMA contract that's currently in place, executed, I believe, last year, and you were the technical advisor for that. Can you talk a little bit about the process you went through for taking the CPC positions on those negotiations and how that worked? And if it's more appropriate to talk about that after Commissioner Gadke's presentation, then that would be fine too.
So again, what I was doing is we did recommendations as a commission. Those recommendations were put forward, and then we had lots of conversation in regards to why those recommendations should be added to the parameters. So that's what we were, primarily doing. And we talked with as community as the partners, so CPC, OIG, OPA, and the city. And then we went over language and how the language would impact, would change the contract and those types of things. And so we really did focus on, again, accountability issues.
Thank you. Well, Commissioner Gadke, can you share more information about SPMA and the contract and how all this works?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Hopefully, I've got some remarks and just some guidance, so I'll be brief and give you kind of a brief overview of what SPMA does, who we represent, what our goals are, and then also as to kind of speak towards addressing CPC's 2019 letter of recommendations related to, at that time, the beginning, I believe, of the contract negotiations. And as a disclaimer, I was not part of the SPMA board. I was a member during that last negotiations. However, I was not on the board or part of the negotiation team, so I can't speak to anything that occurred during the past negotiations. So, and then, like I said, I'll have some brief comments, and then obviously open up to any comments or any questions that hopefully maybe I can answer to the best of my abilities. So, the Seattle Police Management Association, SPMA, we represent those holding the rank of lieutenant and captain within the police department, and we currently have around 70 members. SPMA's main purpose is to act as the collective bargaining representative for its members, and this encompasses such things as negotiating a collective bargaining agreement with the city on behalf of its members to establish compensation, benefits, body of work, and other conditions related to employment, ensuring the rights of our members as enumerated in the collective bargaining agreement. Also participating in what we call our joint labor management committees, which is outlined in our CBA, to discuss matters of mutual concern between the department and our members, centering around pertaining to the improvement of the department and the welfare of our members as well. And that's kind of a general what SPMA does. We also have regular meetings with our members to get input from our members for direction on actions to be taken or suggestions. And similar to what Commissioner Dickerson mentioned, in her role in kind of going meeting with CPC, OPA, OIG to kind of gather all those recommendations. Same with us, we survey our members to see what are priorities for them with upcoming negotiations. And as I mentioned, centering around this compensation, benefits, body work, and other conditions of employment as well. Looking at the 10 recommendations that were outlined in CPC's 2019 letter, it appears from looking at that from the letter that was sent out by the council central staff, as well as at the time, council members Herbold blog post on her page, that most of the recommendations outlined by CPC have been addressed or incorporated to our current CBA. And as far as our goals for this upcoming collective bargaining agreement negotiations, obviously I can't go into specifics due to the confidentiality piece, but generally speaking, our goals will revolve around those compensation, will revolve around compensation, benefits, body of work, and other conditions of employment between SPMA members and the city. And then finally, I'd just like to touch on, what we do daily as holding the ranks of lieutenant and captain, or what our SPMA members do in the department. We are part of the department's upper management and leadership team. And as such, our roles are, being supportive of and tasked with implementing the chief of police's visions, values, and priorities for the department and for what he'd like to see the department do in relation and working with the community. We are responsible for all of the various sections and units within each of the department's bureaus, and responsible for their day-to-day operations of those sections and units. We interact daily with those above and below in our command. And we are dependent upon dependent upon some of our members' assignments, they interact daily with our community members, our neighborhoods, and our business communities to hear and address their concerns. And a prime example would be primarily our precinct staff, our precinct captains, and our watch commanders that run the various watches that have our patrol officers, and as well as our other relational policing bureaus that we have. And with that, that's kind of a very brief, like a 1,000-foot view of what SPMA does. And I didn't want to take too much time talking about that. So with that, if there's any questions, any comments, anything that I could try to address, or if there's anything else I can try to explain a little further, please let me know.
Thank you, Commissioner Key. Reverend Waller has a question, a comment.
Yeah, I have a question and for clarification. Could you explain what the CBA is for new commissioners, for commissioners who might not know what that is? And also, at one time, the SPMA contract was always negotiated after SPOG, and that changed a few years ago. And so I just was wondering if you might know why it changed to be first and then SPOG comes last.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. Great question. So the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, is also known as the contract. The Seattle Police Management Association, I guess our title, but we're the union representing lieutenants and captains. So the contract, collective bargaining agreement, enumerates the various rights for its members, and also, I guess, rights granted by the city department. I'm not sure if that's the right language to use, but basically it establishes wages, benefits, working conditions, assignments, transfers. Also in our current collective bargaining agreement, it touches on sections related to management rights being the department's rights, like the chief of police, as far as assignments, staffing, et cetera. Compensation, like I mentioned. Also covers the disciplinary process, what that looks like, and spells out how our members related to any OPA-related investigations and or criminal investigations. Talks on our grievance procedure, and what the grievance procedure would be is if a member of ours feels that our contract language, for example, spells out a certain condition or right and feels that the department was not aligned with that, then we have a process in place to grieve that grievance related to the contract language with the department and work through that to try and get an agreement as to why or minimize any future grievances. So it's, I guess for lack of a better, it's kind of like the rule book, if you will, of our members as a part of being employed by the City of Seattle Police Department, our interaction with the department. And as far as the second question, I can't really speak to the historical content related to SPMA contract versus SPOG's contract being settled first or negotiated first. My understanding is recently, since I've been an SPMA member, is our contracts are simultaneous in a sense, but I believe ours ends a year before SPOG's does, I believe. So I believe the city, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Officer Mullins might be able to explain this better than I, but I want to say that might be staggered just because the amount of time and energy it takes to negotiate contracts for the city across all unions for the city, not just for police only. And so as far as I can remember, once I became an SP member, usually our contract end date is typically always been a year prior to SPOG's end date on a contract. I think to allow for those negotiation process so the city's not hit constantly negotiating. Hopefully that answered your question, Reverend Walter. And Officer Mullins, if I misspoke on any of that, please speak up.
No, you're fine. That was excellent. Yeah, that's exactly the way it works.
I have a question. I heard Commissioner Dickerson also mention parameters, and just to be clear, it's my understanding that parameters in this negotiation are set on what will be included in the contract, and after those parameters are set, nothing new can be added to the contract. Is that correct? Is that what the parameters mean?
Yes. So it would kind of be the opener. So the work that the CPC will do and the other entities in the city council will then go with the labor relations committee and say, this is what we'd like to see negotiated on. And then kind of similar to what I said, the SPMA would also do the same with our members to set those parameters. You know, what should SPMA negotiate with the city for our members? So it's the same thing. So then once those parameters are established, then they get forwarded, and then what you kind of call like the opener. So that's what both sides are going to be negotiating for. And then it's very, very limiting or to be able to introduce new items that are not part of the openers. That would probably involve additional negotiations trying to bring in other items that may not have been touched on by those opening parameters. Does that kind of make sense, hopefully?
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. I'm not really sure who could answer this. But so it's my understanding, I mean, I'm not really sure, first of all, exactly who's in the room doing the negotiating, because what I read in a memo that Reverend Walton and I researched a number of years ago was that there's this labor relations policy committee, and it deliberately includes 5 city council persons, and that they are intimately involved in the negotiations, because when the final negotiated settlement is reached, all 5 of the city council members have to agree. And once that happens, the city council has essentially signed on to it. So I guess I just want to make sure I understand if that's correct. And then the second thing is, if that's true, then what happens when we have a whole new slew of city council people? I mean, does it start all over again? I don't know. Anyway, I just want to know if I'm clear about that, because that was our understanding a couple of years ago anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Rosa. I can't speak exactly who's all in the room during negotiations. I know the city has their negotiating team, kind of as you outlined, and then SPMA will also have its own negotiating team in the room to negotiate. And then as far as the process, so as the negotiations progress and they're, for lack of better words, I guess, agreement on certain issues that were presented during negotiations, then eventually once both negotiating teams believe they have an agreement, then it's called a tentative agreement. And then the tentative agreement gets reviewed by the various parties to include SPMA's board, and eventually, depending on the tentative agreement, it gets put to a vote. I can speak on the SPMA side. It gets put to a vote to our membership. Should we accept this contract in its current form? And if we get ratification of it from our membership, and then the city side also has ratification, then it progresses to that next level where it gets reviewed by the city council for implementation. So until it's finalized by the city council and then enacted by the executive's office, it doesn't become the actual true contract. Probably not explaining that very clearly. But in its early stages, when it first comes out of the negotiation area, it's considered a tentative agreement until there's a formal agreement, I guess maybe that's the best way to phrase it.
Okay.
By all sides, or both parties, being city side and SPMA side.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Merkel?
Yes, thank you. I have a question, I guess, for Commissioner Dickerson and Commissioner Gadke. I think, for one, it might be helpful for context to see the letter that the CPC wrote about the parameters for the SPMA contract back in, I believe, 2019. I'm not sure if that's been shared with commissioners. So we might want to do that so there's additional context ahead of next Tuesday's hearing with City Council and CPC on opening and establishing the parameters for this upcoming SPMA negotiation. But to that end, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Commissioner Dickerson, but if you're able to talk about some of the key recommendations the CPC had in that we provided in that letter for the last round, and what of our top priorities ultimately were included in the current SPMA contract and what was not. Are you able to speak to any of that?
Oh, I don't have the documentation in front of me, unfortunately, because I have been en route to go to bargaining. I know that some of the some of the things that we had requested as the CPC were things like the 180-day tolling, that there was, let me see, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head because, you know, like I said, it's been a while since I've actually looked at the documentation, and I've been bargaining lots of other contracts right now. There was so the 180-day tolling, let me see if I have any of the documents. Hang on. Let me see if I can pull something up.
Sorry to put you on the spot. And I guess the general question is also, it seems like there were some things we were able to get, well, to what degree did the things we asked for in that letter were included in the parameters? And from there to how successful were those things in ultimately getting in the final contract without necessarily going into the details?
There were quite a bit of items that we as a CPC had asked for that did get into the contract. Some of it, the language may have been, like may not be as exact as what we would have liked to have seen from the CPC, but it was, since it's a bargaining thing, we, it still made it in there. And, it still has teeth in it. It's just not exactly, like the language is not exactly how some may have wanted it. In regards, as far as a percentage, I wouldn't be able to give you a percentage in regards to that. And I'm trying to find. Let's see.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just trying to understand, just generally, the impact of the point in time we're at with respect to this next FEMA contract and the hearing next week. And what ability we have to influence what's included within the parameters of the next FEMA contract.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we are getting things in early on, it helps to tailor the conversation in regards to what's going to be presented to LRPC. I know some of the parameters had been, prior to me coming on board, had already been set, but then we did add on when we met with LRPC. So, and again, I'm trying to find one of the lists. I have to go through some emails.
I kind of just, it looks like Interim Director Ellis just sent out to everybody's email a copy of the 2019 letter. All the commissioners.
Thank you.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
While Commissioner Dickerson is looking, are there any questions for Lieutenant Gadke?
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Officer Mullins. Lieutenant Gadke, my question might be easy to answer. In terms of lieutenant wellness, we always talk about officer wellness, but we also know that lieutenant wellness is important as well. How did it happen that the lieutenants in their last contract did not negotiate 410s for their membership, especially when it comes to watch commanders? And in terms of being able to widen their membership by having more lieutenants, I think there should be a watch commander for each court code, and they should be on 410s as well. So can you talk to that and tell me how that possibly happened?
Sure. So actually in our current contract, as part of the, let me see what it is here. The Appendix B, Memorandum of Understanding, Appendix B of our current contract, there is reference in there about a 410 schedule reopener, that if the department does implement a 410 patrol schedule with SPOG, and they desire to extend that schedule to potentially impacted SPMA members, in other words, watch commanders, that this agreement could be reopened to bargain that with the department. And as a matter of fact, we have an upcoming JLMC, a Joint Labor Management Committee meeting, where that topic is going to come up during that committee to discuss that. Because as you know, our watch commanders are working different hours, 9-hour days, and a little different shift rotation than the patrol officer. So that is on the table and it's being explored right now. So thank you for that question.
Thanks for your answer. Appreciate it.
The rest of us don't know what a 410 is. Maybe you could explain.
Sure. So currently, our patrol division, our patrol officers and sergeants, they work a 4-10 shift. So they work 4 10-hour shifts, 4 days of 10-hour shifts for their work week. And by that, that gives them their minimum of 80 hours per pay period. So they work the 4-10 shift, they're on, it's a 4-3 fix, meaning they work 4 days on, have 3 days off, 4 days on, 3 days off.
Okay. Oh, I also wanted to mention that on the CPC website, a lot of the recommendations in the 2019 letter came straight out of the ordinance and the 2017 accountability ordinance. And there actually is a tracker on the CPC website, if you go in there, that goes through each one of the recommendations and gives us status as to whether or not it's in either of the two contracts with the law enforcement unions. And it looks like it's pretty up to date. So it's very detailed. So that's just really helpful. And it's on our website. Thanks.
Exactly. Thank you, Commissioner Wilson, for pointing that out.
Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Dickerson, did you find what you were looking for?
If there's the tracker, then it would be the stuff that's in the tracker, because those are the things those are the priorities that we had sent forward.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that certainly is something that all the commissioners could take a look at and may need to take a look as we go head into next week and have conversations about what we would like to see on the table as part of the parameters. Well, I want to thank Commissioner Dickerson and Commissioner Lieutenant Yankee for sharing with us the work that you do regarding the contract and just what SPMA is all about. So I appreciate you taking this time and sharing with the full commission. Thank you.
Hunter, and also thank you everybody for giving me the opportunity and giving me the time to do so. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. We
Yes,
appreciate
And I'll just say, before we move into the next part of the agenda, again, as the update that co-chair Hunter provided from City Council and the co-chairs, next Tuesday, August 8th is a hearing it's going to be at City Council. That'll be on the topic of setting the parameters for the next SPMA contract. That is the opportunity to kind of provide more input on what should be included in the parameters for the next contract. So mark your calendars, Tuesday, August 8th. And again, that is a hearing that's required by Seattle Municipal Code to occur at least 90 days prior to the beginning of bargaining. And so if my math is right, that puts bargaining at sometime in November to begin. And I think as Commissioner Wilson pointed out, we're probably going to have at least some new city council members. So I would imagine membership of the Labor Relations Policy Committee will probably change by the time bargaining begins. 5:30 p.m. in City Council chambers. Next Tuesday, August 8th. Okay, well, that brings us to the next item in our agenda, and this relates to our executive director search process. And the co-chairs, as you all know, have been actively working on this process with our accountability partners and City Council. And we are coming to you today with an additional recommendation for the process. And I'm going to outline that recommendation right now, which will involve a motion and a vote to amend the process to that end. And basically what we're proposing is a voluntary public forum on the Seattle channel which is essentially akin to what occurred as part of the process for selecting the new SPD chief and the new OPA director. And we're proposing that we do something similar for the CPC ED finalists. And basically to allow more time for the commission to consider the 3 finalists for the executive director position, the co-chairs believe it is, again, necessary and appropriate to amend the current process we've already adopted. And as part of that, what we would do is we would invite the finalists to participate in the Seattle Channel program for taping, and the taping would occur tomorrow. We've already begun the process of planning that in the anticipation that the commission would approve that recommendation today. And this would be an opportunity for the community to not only learn more about the ED finalists, but also to engage and propose some questions. The participation in the forum we recommend would be voluntary, and the participation would not be a selection criteria. The format and the content of the event would be developed between the Seattle Channel, the city's senior executive recruiter, Pam Inch, in consultation with the CPC co-chairs. Additionally, the community survey that was approved at the last meeting, we propose to amend to include an opportunity for the community to provide additional feedback based on the airing of this Seattle Channel program, and the survey period would be extended to August 15. As part of this, there would be an authorization of an expenditure of up to about $1,500 to support the costs of the Seattle Channel event. And it is anticipated that the commission will make its final selection regarding the executive director position at our next meeting on August 16. So at this time, with that introduction, first I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. If there are not, feel free to interrupt me, but I'll go ahead and keep presenting this proposal. But I would at this time entertain a motion to amend the selection process for the executive director as follows. The finalists will be invited to participate in the Seattle Channel programming event on August 3, that's tomorrow, to provide the community with an opportunity to learn more about them. That participation in such a forum will be voluntary. Participation in this event is not a selection criterion. And that format and content of the event will be determined by the Seattle Channel, the city's senior executive recruiter, in consultation with the CPC co-chairs. And that the associated community survey will be amended to include an opportunity for the community to provide additional feedback. The survey period will be extended to August 15th. And an associated expenditure of up to $1,500 is authorized to support the cost of the Seattle Channel event. So that is what the co-chairs are proposing. So at this time, I'll certainly entertain such a motion.
I guess I have a question about,
Yes. Commissioner Levitt has a question.
I understand voluntary, but I guess what do you mean by not a selection criterion?
That if a candidate chooses not to participate, that would not necessarily be something the commission considers when making its final decision.
So in other words, that can't exclude someone.
Correct.
Okay. I guess, but otherwise it's an opportunity to hear more from the candidates and have the community ask questions and provide input and get to know the candidates better.
But if a finalist chooses not to participate, that doesn't remove that finalist from selection. Commissioner Erickson.
And if you address this, I apologize, I missed it. But what does that do to the timeline for filling the position?
Correct. So it doesn't change the timeline for filling the position, but it changes our timeline. While we initially contemplated going into executive session today to discuss the candidates and then coming out of executive session today to vote, we would still go into executive session today to discuss the candidates, but we would not vote until our next meeting on August 16th, which also gives the commissioners more time to consider the feedback of other commissioners during the executive session and the community as part of this event. But the timeline for the confirmation hearing at City Council would be unchanged. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Erickson?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Walden, I see Pam Inch and Commissioner Johnson has her hand up. Commissioner Walden.
Oh, thank you. I mean, you said that about the community, so how would the questions, how is that gonna be handled? Maybe might be able to talk about that.
Moderator or something?
Yes, so I'll defer to Pam Inch to answer some of those questions. There will be a moderator with the Seattle channel. I believe his name is Brian Callahan. And again, my understanding would be modeled similar to the OPA and SPD search, which did involve questions from the community. Pam?
Thanks to the co-chairs. So I just want to clarify the questions. The questions will not, if this is a taped event, so the public would not have the opportunity to ask questions because it's not live. So what we've done to kind of come up with the questions, we're still in the process of developing those. And clearly, if any of the commissioners have an interest in a topic area, that would be appropriate for them, for folks to share that at this time. But where we've come up with the questions is we've asked some of our accountability partners what they would like to see, kind of additional questions, as well as we looked at the questions that were provided by the public in association with the OPA search as kind of some, it is to provide some insight as to what would be appropriate questions. And then we also have looked at both the police chief forums and the forum for the OPA around feedback about questions that weren't answered or asked, and to also inform those questions.
Thank you, Pam. Commissioner Johnson?
That clarification, Pam. I have a question around whether or not the other candidates have any idea that this is a possibility, that they will be interviewing tomorrow for in this format. Because I know that Collie's here right now, so obviously Collie knows that that's going on. So do the other commissioners, do the other candidates have any idea that this is a possibility, or will it be like a, sprung on them that, hey, this will be happening tomorrow, just be ready?
Good question.
Commissioner Johnson, I reached out to all the candidates last week when I first became aware that this was a possibility. And so they've been made aware. And I've had conversations with all three of the finalists.
Okay, thank you for that.
And part of the reason for the scheduling is the co-chairs became aware. Well, first, this was an issue that was raised between the co-chairs and city council close to the last meeting we had. We didn't have an opportunity to bring this up and vote on it at our last meeting. But because of the timeline, we felt it was necessary to begin the planning process immediately after our last meeting on July 19th. So logistics have been worked out. The finalists have been connected with and communicated with. Things are ready to go in anticipation that we would present this at today's meeting and have a vote on it. So this is to say, as Commissioner Johnson points out, that had we not done that, then it would have been more of a springing on everybody, and we didn't want to do that. So that's why we made the decision to begin the planning process. But again, we can't go forward with it unless we, as a commission, choose to amend the process we've already approved. And again, this is the recommendation of the co-chairs to do so.
It's also optional.
It's also, yes, as Reverend Walden pointed out, it's also optional. So at least that's what we're proposing, that we are making this as an opportunity for the finalists to participate in. so that the community and commissioners can learn more about them through this process. But again, as I discussed with Commissioner Erickson, if one of the finalists or more choose not to participate, that doesn't take them out of the running. We can still consider that person for the job at our next meeting.
I'm happy to step away from the chair and move the selection process for the executive director position be amended as was read earlier, and I'm happy to read it again if that's necessary.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hunter. We have a motion. Is there a second to amend the process as discussed?
I would second.
And, thank you. Commissioner Levitt has seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go straight into the vote. So there's been a motion and a second. All in favor of amending the selection process as discussed, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the selection process has been amended to include the Seattle Channel event. Again, we will expect taping tomorrow. I believe airing on the Seattle Channel is likely to be somewhere close to August 14th, I believe, possibly sooner. But we will get back to you with that information as soon as we have it from Seattle Channel. And again, that would lead us to having a final commission discussion and vote on the finalists on August 16th, which again, as I mentioned to Commissioner Erickson, does not change the timeline for the city council consideration. See here, I think that brings us to the point of our meeting where we're going to go into executive session. I'm just going to check in with our council, Joe Levin, who's on the call, to see if there's anything I missed before we go into executive session.
I think you covered it. Pam, is there anything else to cover in open session?
The only thing that we would, and Joe, I would defer to you, is if the commissioners would like to have a conversation about topic areas for questions, it would be appropriate, I believe, to have that conversation here, not in executive session.
Yes, that's correct.
Sure, Commissioner Gecky, I had a question. And I'm trying to remember from the last questions that were posed to the candidates, but my question, maybe a topic, I don't know if it was explained well by the candidates, but something addressing the title as executive director, and typically speaking, if you're in an executive director role, you pretty much have the ability, your own vision, values, priorities, is that to institute them. But it's kind of a different dynamic here with the CPC because the executive director is, for lack of a better word, subordinate to the co-chairs of the CPC. So maybe I'm thinking a question might be beneficial is knowing that you still have authorities and as outlined in ordinance to carry out the functions of the executive director, but still be adherent to the guidance by the CPC co-chairs. Like how would, I guess, someone in that role manage that or be aware of that or be able to accept that, if that makes sense?
That makes sense. I can work with that.
Reverend Walden has a question.
Thank you. I think also a question about management of staff and morale and team building and that type of stuff. I don't know how you frame that because I'm not a wordsmith.
Okay.
Anything else?
I have a question for Pam. Will the finalists get the questions ahead of time?
Yes, my intent is once we finalize the questions, hopefully this afternoon, that can be shared with the candidates, because I think, interviews we did give the questions about a half hour before the interview, but I think television is a little bit more intimidating. So do want to provide those questions this at least early this evening to help the candidates prepare.
And I would just like to see a question about the ordinance
Okay.
be in there. Since that directs all the work that we do.
Okay.
That, and particularly the role of the ED as it relates to the ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, well, this is great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Before we move on, I just want to do one last check, see if anyone has any other thoughts that they'd like to see included in the public forum. Okay, seeing none. As we discussed, we are going into executive session, and the purpose of today's executive session is to evaluate the qualifications of applicants for public employment pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1G, and to discuss with legal counsel representing the CPC litigation or potential litigation related to proposed action or current practice pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I. It is expected that the commission will be in executive session until approximately 11:30 a.m. The commission will not be taking any action today following executive session, and the meeting will be adjourned at the conclusion of executive session. And with that, we will be going into executive session.
And just as a note, the setup today is going to be different apparently than last time. So I don't know, Pam, if you have an idea about how the commissioners are going to break into exec session. Because apparently there's not a staff person to assist with the breakout room.
I see.
So I think the staff has, we have an arrangement to get us into the breakout room, and then I will manage us once we are in the breakout room.
Okay.
I see Commissioner Washington has her hand up.
I don't think I'm a panelist. I just want to make sure I'll be able to get into the breakout room.
Yeah, I see you as a panelist. We'll make sure you're in the breakout room. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to stay and just make sure everyone's there.
Use the restroom.
Okay.
They are.
I'll come in. Reverend Hunter, it doesn't look like you're in the executive session.
Oh.
For some reason, I hear
Breakout
press a
session
button.
has started. Join now.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, then my role here is done. I'm also putting the room